There are many reasons why students do come to college these days. Some come, of course, to get married, to find a husband or even a wife. Some come, many come, to improve their status, to find a better job, to prepare themselves for a professional or high vocational position, perhaps to improve thereby, almost certainly to improve thereby, their earning power. Some, of course, come because it's the thing to do, because these days people do tend to go on to college. Sometimes students will go on in the manner of a drift into the college of their choice, having nothing better to do at the time. However, if one asks what is the best reason for going to college, one has to think, because there are many good reasons. I think I would give my reason as this: to help fulfill one's human potentiality, to repair one's major deficiencies as one interprets them, let's say, upon high school graduation. I think that students should come to college in a sense of humility. It was Socrates, after all, who pointed out, I think truly, that unless one understands his own ignorance, he is in no position to learn. With that understanding, one can come to college hopeful that he will learn and that he will grow in wisdom.
When should a student start planning for college?
Actually, a student should start planning at the beginning of the 9th grade year.
That soon?
Yes. The colleges base their entrance requirements upon 4 years of high school.
I see.
So the 9th grade is really a very important part of the high school program.
Do the schools begin getting information to students that soon?
Yes, we start preparing in the 8th grade. At the end of the 8th grade year, each student is given one of our B-books, a little booklet that will explain the entire high school program to them. It also explains all of our courses, and we have prepared in this booklet a college preparatory course, so a student can check very carefully and make his preparations before he starts high school.
One of the things it would seem that a student and a parent would have to determine is what are the alternatives to going to college. What are they?
Actually, a student will have several possibilities facing him. There are technical schools upon leaving high school. Many of the boys are concerned with military service. Some students are interested in apprenticing in the trades, also going right to work from high school.
How does a student determine whether he should go to college or whether he should go to a technical school or what have you?
Very often his academic success in high school will be a determining factor. Students' own planning, the interest of parents, there are many, many factors involved in this, and we try to work on an individual basis with each student in the high school.
Are there various kinds of tests which can be taken?
Yes, we have complete records in the high school on each student. We keep a complete record of all the tests they have taken from elementary clear through high school. We also have tests that they take in the high school that are all recorded. We use this. We also have teachers' recommendations, various types of information available for our use.
Dean McDonald, you're part of the team that goes out to the joint high school college visitations and talks with high school students about college. Most other colleges do this as well. What do you find to be the major concern of high school students these days with regard to asking you questions about college?
It's interesting that you should mention this, Al, because there has been a switch in the last 4 or 5 years. At one time, this was back in the late 40s, primarily the kids were interested in what kind of social life there was. I find a real concerted effort on the part of students to find out 2 or 3 things. One, about the academic life. Of course, they're all concerned about whether they can be admitted to college. And thirdly, they're concerned about the social life. In other words, what goes on at your institution in the extracurricular hours or the hours beyond classes.
But in their interest, social life is taking a secondary position now.
I would say so, and I think we're finding this true on our campus as well as many other campuses.
It's axiomatic that the first quarter requires some pretty severe adjustments on the part of a student. What do these adjustments involve?
Well, primarily, I think in living. In our particular institution now, we have graduated from a commuter's college to a residential college, and the business of living in dormitories or living groups where there are more than yourself living in a room as you do at home, I'm talking about the students now, they find that there is a real adjustment, a give and take that they haven't had to have up to now unless they've had to fight their way with their brothers and sisters along the way. This is one of the major adjustment problems they have. The other is that we get many high school leaders that come here who were leaders in their own schools, but when they get here they find that it's a real job to get into the social, political, and other aspects of college living. This is one other aspect of their adjustment, and I think third and primarily the basic one is the adjustment to the types of classes they're going to be taking, particularly in our instance the humanities class that is organized. This is sometimes new to these kids, the idea that more than one course would be incorporated into a solid course and be presented by several lecturers and then broken down into reading sections.
The biggest difference I found was that in actually your classes as a whole, because in high school I was used to everything just being more or less spoon-fed to me. And now I'm in college and I find myself sitting in a lecture and having to take notes for almost a whole hour. And the professors aren't conscious of that. They have these certain facts that they want to get across to you, and they expect you to be able to pick these out. Well, it's very difficult just coming right straight from high school to be able to do this, and I think that's one of the biggest problems that I've had.
Learn to take good notes.
Right.
How do you learn to take good notes?
I feel that you'd learn to take good notes by outlining everything, because the professor has usually prepared his talk according to an outline, and if you can translate this back into an outline, it'll be very easy to study your notes, and it's also logical.
In high school, you tend to go to school at 8 or 9, and you get out at 3:15 or so. That's not like that on campus. Do you find that causes a problem in the transition from high school to college?
Well, it's a little different. You find that you have so much more time. You have, say, 1 hour between a class, and you can go over your notes for the next class, or study and read. I think this, too, tends to give you more time to waste. If you go back to the dorm, then you waste the time in walking and maybe chat a while, and so it's important, I think, to take advantage of every minute that you have.
What about extracurricular activities?
Well, myself, I've had a chance to be an editor on the Collegian and have a lead in Mice and Men this quarter. And I know I always post an hour in the newspaper office. Usually I have 2 to 3 hours a day. And then for the play, I assign 2 or 3 hours 3 or 4 nights of the week. And then for my studies, I try to figure out each week just how much studying I'm going to have to do in the different subjects, whether there's going to be a test or not, and more or less make out a schedule, and then have it flexible enough so that I can change if anything comes up.
Well, apparently, in your case, the activities don't interfere with the academic aspect.
No.
You find this generally to be true?
Quite a few students tend to, as soon as they get up to college, to kind of let their hair down and just jump into almost every activity they can find. This tends to take away from their schoolwork. More emphasis is put on who you can know, why you know them, what they can do for you, rather than what you can learn.
You got to guard against that.
Sometimes. Now, I mean, you can be completely opposed to that and just study, whereby you aren't known, you don't know anything about the school. If you talk to someone about the school, the advantages of the school, they couldn't tell you about them.
Oh, I believe that you get an education from both aspects, like Noel and Wes both said. You have to learn from studying and you have to learn from people. And I think that you should be able to be a well-rounded person and be that in a sense that you can participate in both things and you can compromise. You can get the things that are important from your friends and from your activities and from your studying. And being able to do them both is very important in college.
especially your first year.
I think that being a freshman is a training period anyway, and so I feel that it would be better to join too many clubs and then later find out, because you're going to be finding out a lot of things that you never knew before. And so this is a good time to try it out. I think it would be better to join too many than not enough.
So many that you flunk out the first quarter?
No, I think you should be able to realize before you get to that point that you're in too many.
On the campus, I do find that there is more of a trend towards social activities that involve a little cultural aspect, lectures and special art exhibits. Our Viking Union does a good deal of work in this regard. One of the problems is always, Al, that a kid needs to get adjusted to academic life first before he takes on more than he can chew as far as social life is concerned, because it can lead to some problems of having a great time while you're going to college but flunking out because of the amount of time you spend.
Well, but these social activities do have a very real place in a college.
Oh, there's no question about that. The old concept of the ivy-colored walls that are full of academe with nothing, with the extracurricular program as no part of the total college scene is gone by the board. And, of course, this shifts in emphasis as time goes on.
But the point here is you do have to learn to budget your time. Is that right?
Budgeting of time is intrinsic for your education, because if you, like I mentioned before, are just mainly concerned with one aspect of college, social life or studies, you aren't going to be a well-rounded individual. And when you do get out into the big, wide world, you won't know which way to lean.
The student has to determine whether he wants to go to the school near his home or whether he wants to go outside of town, or for that matter outside of the state. What are the advantages of, well, it really gets down to living near Ma and Pa or getting away from Ma and Pa.
This is essentially it. A kid that goes to a college in his own hometown is very often apt to run around with the same kids that he ran around with in high school, even if they're not in college. This can have a very disconcerting effect. I think the fact that a good percentage of the kids would like to get away from Mom and Pop while they're going to college has its advantages. Of course, from a financial standpoint, maybe spending a year or two at home to find out whether you can do college work without the additional expense of room and board away. Although I could talk quite some time on the fact that it doesn't cost a great deal more to send a person away to college, assuming all other fees are the same, than it is to stay at home.
One last question, and that is the old question of large university versus small college. What are the advantages and disadvantages of each kind?
Well, we could spend considerable time on this. I don't think there's any question that the smaller a college is, the more personal they can be to the individual, the better the instructors can get to know them, the smaller the classes might be. Of course, it depends on the individual institution. I know many large institutions that have very good contact between faculty and students. I know small colleges that don't do very much in this regard, but by and large, the smaller classes in the small institution, the more personal approach from the professors, and the ability to get to the professors. At many of the large universities, for instance, you may see the professor lecturing and have to get an appointment that would take you 2 weeks to get in to see him in his classroom or in his office. There are always advantages to a particular type of institution, but it depends primarily upon the individual. Some kids can survive in a large university, other kids can't.
How much does it cost to go to college?
Well, that's quite a question. Actually, the costs for college might vary anywhere from about $800 or $900 a year for a student going to a public college and doing a conservative job of it, to perhaps $2,800 or $3,000 per year for some of the colleges.
Now, does this include everything, including living expenses and the whole works?
Generally speaking, the answer I've given would be yes. That it does cover everything. However, there are wide variations in the amount that individual students will spend.
What about loans at colleges?
Most colleges have a loan program now. This is a thing which seems to have come upon us a great deal more in the few years than formerly. We here at Western, for example, have a loan program that involves two different possibilities. One, a regular student loan that we've had for some years, and another, the National Defense Education Act loans.
How do those NDEA loans work?
The procedure for applying for these is fairly standard from one college to another. And if a student makes an application in the state of Washington on the regular uniform application blank, which is used widely by all the colleges, this can be applied for as an application for a student loan or an NDEA loan. The amounts that are legal in this particular connection are $1,000 maximum, but in fact the average is closer to $475 to $500 a year.
I see. Would it be true to say that generally loans are easier to come by and perhaps in larger amounts at private colleges than at public colleges?
I think the answer in general would have to be yes.
What about scholarships and work grants? Are these fairly readily available at colleges?
Again, this varies widely from one college to another. Most of the private colleges, I think, and from my standpoint somewhat unfortunately, are able to offer a greater amount of money in scholarships than would be true in the public colleges. However, almost all colleges do have some sort of scholarship program. This oftentimes is weighted rather heavily toward freshmen, and it tapers off pretty markedly toward the junior and senior year.
This is something that a potential college student who wants to know about scholarships and work grants, he should find that information out from the specific institution that he's interested in.
Yes, very definitely.
What about personal expenses? What part do they play in the overall college expense program?
Well, this is probably the tackiest point in the whole bundle, really. We can predict pretty closely what a student is going to spend for standard costs, room and board, tuition, fees, even some incidental expenses, the cost of books and that sort of thing. But when it comes to the individual, his personal tastes in what he does after hours is going to determine the total cost. And this, of course, is a highly individual matter.
And to this point of personal expenses, that's where a budgeted college financial setup with family and student could really go awry.
Very definitely and frequently does.
What about budgeting money? Have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think that a college student should have a checking account, and it's a good experience for him to handle money, so in later life he'll be able to...
Do you find there's a problem in the transition? Did you handle a lot of money regularly, day to day in high school?
I've never handled a lot of money. But no, I didn't handle very much money in high school, but up here, I think that most students get along with it. I don't think too many of them go into the hole.
I found the easiest way is I have my money in a banking account back home. I have my parents send up a check each week for $5. And $5 a week is more than enough if I budget my money.
For your personal expenses.
But if I don't budget my money, I'm borrowing and paying off when I get my next check.
Would you all agree that it's nice to have a parent sending a check every month? You don't think so?
I like to be able to be on my own. In a sense, it's kind of like being grown up. And you're becoming a young adult. And just part of budgeting your money and your time goes along with it. And it's a challenge to me, and I want to be able to prove that I can do it.
Here is a booklet called The Cost of 4 Years of College, which can be made available to our viewers. Is that a fairly accurate statement of the expenses of almost all of the colleges in the United States?
Yes, I've looked this booklet over before, and I think that it is really quite an adequate summary of the total cost picture from one college to another, and would give a student a basis for determining generally what the expenses would be at a given institution. I like particularly the part that's on page 4, in which they give the student an opportunity to sketch out very briefly what his estimate would be of his total budget for a given year.
Are these figures up to date?
There are some problems in that connection. Most booklets of this kind run about a year behind, in that it takes nearly that long to get the figures collected initially.
You mentioned that parents were an important factor. Could you expand on that just a moment?
Yes, indeed. We really welcome parents coming in. Those of us in the counseling department are available. Appointments can be made. We certainly welcome them in here. We would like to sit down and discuss the students' possibilities and help in their planning and anything that we can do.
Does the attitude of a parent with regard to his child going to college make a difference?
Oh yes, I think so, very much so. Parental encouragement at home, parental interest is a very major factor in helping a young person decide what ultimately he should do.
I noticed this large book here. I assume this is some of the material you have available to help students with college. What kind of materials do you have?
Actually, we have a great mass of material available. We have bulletins and catalogs from dozens of colleges in the department here. We keep files on the colleges in the state and also many of the colleges out of the state.
And what is this book here?
This is a new service that we subscribed to a few years ago. It's a college admissions data service. This book is renewed twice each year for us to keep it very current. And
it contains what kind of information?
It contains all the information concerning entrance requirements, the tests needed, the admission procedures, expenses of college.
Every bit of information.
Every bit of information in this book is on 2 pages. It's very rapid to work with. And
does it contain scholarship information?
Yes, it also contains. Each school has a complete section on financial aids available.
And you have complete information here to help students going after scholarships and work grants.
Yes.
The types of help that you can give a student in planning for college, most high schools provide these kinds of counseling services?
I think so, today. We feel fortunate here in the staff that we have and the information available, but we have considerable amounts of information in this office on many of the schools. We have it on all of the schools in the state and many of the schools in other states. If we do not have it, we have information that we can give parents or students as to where they can very easily receive information of this type.
With regard to admission requirements, I think that colleges generally throughout the nation are stiffening these to some degree. How do they go about it, and what problems does this pose for a potential college student?
Well, first of all, I can tell you that it proposes a problem for colleges because I think this is true at Washington State and most of the colleges in this area, that with the increase in admission requirements, it seems that our freshman classes are becoming more and more predominantly women. This is one aspect of it. But essentially, when a college looks for the establishment of admission standards, what they're primarily concerned with are several aspects. I don't think any college uses one criteria, but they're looking for grade achievement in high school, and this, incidentally, is the best single indicator of success in college. They're looking for test information, and practically every school in this state looks to the Washington Pre-College Differential Battery. Then they're looking for, to a certain extent, recommendations from the counselors and the like. These are essentially what most colleges look to for admission.
What is the purpose of stiffening these requirements?
Well, I think it basically came up in most colleges because of the attrition rate at the end of the first year, and this was reaching amazing proportions. About 50% of the freshman classes of many colleges were not around for the second year.
Flunked out.
Not necessarily all flunked out, but a good percentage of them had not achieved what we would call academic success, or had at our particular institution a 2-point grade average at the end of the first year. Marriage and many of these other things and financial problems caused people to leave school, but we were very concerned, and as are most colleges. Then, of course, you have to look at it from this standpoint that if you have difficulty in determining who is going to be admitted, certainly the ones that have proven themselves.
One hears these days a great deal about closing of college doors, about the lessening of opportunity to go to college. And nearly everything that one hears is true. We know, for instance, that in many, many colleges, before this decade is out, enrollments will double. We know that there will be new colleges starting, as there have recently been new colleges and universities begun over the nation. In spite of these growing enrollments and these institution of new colleges and universities, there are going to be many difficulties in the way of students getting into the college that they particularly choose. The colleges themselves are facing a number of difficulties. They are finding it hard to recruit the able staff that they all want. They're finding it hard to keep up with their building program, to get enough dormitory rooms and classrooms, and all of the other kind of specialized space which is necessary in the modern college. Private colleges are having their difficulties in boosting their endowments. Publicly supported colleges are having their troubles in getting enough money from their state legislatures to continue their growth in quality and quantity. What should the student do, we hear the question asked, in order the best to prepare himself for college, if indeed he is thinking of going to college? The answer to this is complex. If I had to give one answer, I think it would be work on your language, improve your language skills, become a good reader, an avid reader, practice your writing of the English language. A great number of the students who come to college but don't make the grade fail because their English is not up to mark. Different colleges suit different needs. I think that the choice of a college is a serious one that deserves the student's best attention. It is necessary, I think, both to know oneself and to know one's college to make the best possible choice.